Nelson Mandela once called education the most powerful weapon you could use to change the world. It shapes our minds, our societies, and entire generations for years to come, and it's under threat. Good evening, my name is Maia Mazurkiewicz, and welcome to the Anatomy of Disinformation. How can our education system adapt to the information challenges of today? And what role can education play in building social resilience against disinformation? Education isn't just about teaching cold, hard facts. It's about fostering critical thinking, promoting media literacy, and empowering individuals to navigate a world rife with disinformation. Do you read a lot? Well, reading is a great tool to support critical thinking and empower our imagination. Our first guest is a leader in educational innovation and publishing. She's a collective impact practitioner and a reading expert who has dedicated her career to ensuring that education remains accessible and effective in an ever-changing world.
Maria Desur, publisher, reading expert, collective impact practitioner. Maria Desur is a graduate of Roman Studies at the Jagiellonian University in Kraków, literature at the Sorbonne, and communication at the Université Lumière. She is a co-founder of the publishing house Muchomor, the longtime managing director of Egmont and Burda Books, and co-founder of the Universal Reading Foundation, the first Polish organization awarded the Library of Congress Literacy Award. Maria is the winner of the 2019 Zwertała Grand Prix for the best idea to promote reading, and is the author of a book on the subject titled The Superpower of Books.
Maria, thank you so much for joining and welcome in the Anatomy of Disinformation.
Hello, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. We're talking about a very important topic today, that is education. And in the world that is changing right now, we have so much new technology. Social media are ruling the world, really. More people are rather in the social media than reading books, and this reading books percentage is declining ever so often. And critical thinking, what exactly it is, how it's supporting us?
Critical thinking is the process that you are able to sort of put into life while, let's say, perceiving information, and which means that you actually have your way of understanding what you heard or read, right? So you have the context, right? Context is very important for critical thinking, and by context I mean that you read about the...
So if I'm, for example, looking at something, saying something in social media, I need to be critical in the information I'm receiving, correct?
Absolutely, and you need to have a wider perspective at what you're reading, and this is the context I'm talking about, in order to be able to evaluate whether this information might be true or probably really isn't not, because your context tells you, you know so much about the world, you know the ways logical content should be put together, and so there's one part of which concerns knowledge, there's the other part which concerns actually sort of cause and effect thinking, which makes you able to say, okay, this is not possible, right?
And does today education respond to this issue?
I think there's more and more being said about it. So more and more decision owners are realizing this is crucial, but I don't think our educational systems are right now really up to date with what is happening in the world. I think probably some of our educational systems around the world are sort of a bit further on, but others not so much. And
so you are working on supporting reading itself, right? And making sure that reading is something that people do. So how does it different for people, for humans? How support our brains or societies actually reading a book instead of going into social media? What difference does it make?
So, I mean, if you look at the brain of a child who reads a book versus a brain of a child who watches TV, the process of reading a book is more complicated. It requires an effort from us, and thus makes us exercise more. And for this reason, it makes our brain sort of bigger, you could say. So actually there's research showing that children who are being read to and spoken to can understand twice as much words already as at the age of 3. So very early on, it is very important to read to children and to talk to them, right?
So the parents should basically take books and really read it from, since when?
Since birth.
Since birth?
Yeah, practically since birth. This being said, we call it sharing a book, because at first you're supposed to sort of show the book to the child and try to make him, her interact. So this is, I would say, basically, I like the comparison to sports, because we all understand that if we sit on our sofa for a week and don't do anything, it really will be bad for our health, right? And with the brain, it's practically the same. We really need to exercise it, not to be, you know, in Olympics, like with sports. It's not about us being, you know,
but book is like a gym, right? It's like a gym for a brain.
It's your fitness, right? It's for your brain to be fit. And then if your brain is fit, coming back to the misinformation, then you're sort of fit to approach the amazing amount of content that we are sort of attacked with, right?
And obviously it's super important as we form new societies, because that's exactly what we're talking when we're talking about children, and this specifically this first years of living of the human are critically important for development of the brain. But then does it also support our brain as it is when we're adults?
Of course. It's exactly like with sports. So if you start, you know, working out, as they say, in the early years, then you'll be fit as a teenager. But then if you stop, it really doesn't help you. And with the brain, it's basically the same. You need to exercise a bit. So we're not talking about reading, you know, hours every day. We're talking about, you know, having a book beside your bed and reading, you know, a quarter of an hour maybe every day, and you know.
Exactly. So what are the good habits? I'm actually from those people that are waking up early and not switching on my mobile, but rather taking a book, and that's my time.
That's a great habit, I would say, and the effect that we get is that you lower your stress levels, which is also very important for, I would say, understanding what is going on. If you're not so stressed, there's very interesting research around that. I think, you know, a good thing is to read something that you're interested in, not something that, you know, someone said we should read. I think we should read what we like. I would probably say that 80% of the importance is that you read, and then we can leave the 20% to, you know, to concentrating on whether it's, you know, the best thing that you could read. I think the most important is that we read something that we like, and it's also proven through research that reading for pleasure, this is a very famous research by PISA from OECD, that reading for pleasure is more important for a teenager's educational success than his or her socioeconomic background, which shows how very powerful this is, right? A child coming from let's say, not educated family can be better than a child coming from an educated family if he or she reads books for pleasure, which means reads regularly, chooses the books that he or she likes, etc., right?
Okay, one last question. How to stay resilient against disinformation? Give us one sentence.
I would say spend time with your friends and family, spend less time on your social media, and try to read regularly.
Thank you so much. So definitely we are encouraging people to go to the brain gym every single day, and as often as possible taking a book instead of their mobile. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Democracies are typical targets of disinformation efforts, but can they become more resilient to disinformation? If so, then how can citizens get involved in these efforts? We'll find out in this next report.
What are deliberative and participatory models of democracies, and how do they curb and prevent disinformation?
Participatory and deliberative models of democracy are considered to be constructive alternatives or complementary elements to the traditional political systems based on representative democracy model that can support society to bring constructive solutions to their own problems. The example that we want to show also as a good practice at the governmental level and that we're working at the Ministry of Digital Affairs is the Youth Assembly that we are going to co-organize together with the Field of Dialogue Foundation. This exceptional participatory and deliberative process will aim at involving children and youth to find constructive solutions to limit harmful content on the internet, mainly social media. So they will be also supported with a group of experts in this process of public deliberation. They will consider how to regulate the law that concerns themselves.
Później z kolejnymi wicemarszałkami w naszej ciężkiej pracy. Oto są nasze.
At the Ministry of Digital Affairs, we are parallelly working on the new policy for participation and transparency. This way, we want to introduce new forms of citizen participation and deliberation based also on recommendations of European Commission. We see it as a solution for negative phenomena such as disinformation. This way, we can limit the impact of anti-democratic actors who want to interfere in public decision-making.
Technology is revolutionizing education, but it also brings challenges, such as social media spin and the rapid spread of disinformation. Our second guest missions is to protect humanity from unaligned AI by building the tools that will train AI to understand and respect our human social realities. Let's explore how technology and innovation can help safeguard the future of education.
Nicholas Brigham Adams, sociologist and democratic technologist. Dr. Nicholas Brigham Adams works to create a world where people can better understand and improve society. His career has focused on making the world as better as possible for as many as possible. He has led electoral campaigns, think tank divisions, and research and development labs. His non-profit, Goodly Labs, is currently rolling out public editor tools which label the reasoning errors and emotional manipulations in online content and train the public to think more critically. His work has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, Reader's Digest, and academic journals.
Brigham, thank you so much for joining us straight from San Francisco.
I'm glad to be here, Maya. Thank you for having me.
Usually we talk about the operations influence around disinformation, but today I want to ask you about the rhetorics, how important it is, how the sentence is being formulated.
Yeah, absolutely, Maya. When we're reading anything online, we need to consider not just who is saying it or what they're saying, but how they're saying it. We have to remember that writing is thinking. So if we can start to analyze and understand the thinking, the quality of the thinking, the structure of the thinking behind the writing, we can start to understand the quality of the information.
And the structure also can make it easier to be manipulated, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are, some people think a couple hundred different ways that we humans commonly fool ourselves and fool each other with reasoning errors, cognitive biases, emotional manipulations, all these different rhetorical kind of tricks that we use against ourselves and against each other, sometimes consciously, sometimes not.
And there's a famous book of Thinking Fast and Slow. How social media are responding to it? Is it very much working on exactly this path of human brain?
Yeah, there's this really great book that you mentioned by Daniel Kahneman. He's a behavioral economist, and I recommend anyone to go read his book. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow, and it shows how each individual human kind of has two different processes for thinking. One is very fast. We would use this in sports. It's very closely connected to all of our kind of action systems. And then we have a very slow way of thinking where we're very careful and we kind of think one thing at a time linearly, and we think very logically. And these two different systems are appropriate in different moments, depending on how much time we have to make a decision and so forth. But the way I think about it, society itself also has these two different systems for thinking fast or for thinking slow. And you can look at the media and social media with daily news and daily conversations. This is kind of our fast thinking system at a societal level. But there's also a slow thinking system, which is science. It's very slow. It's very careful. And as a society, we think through things and we investigate and we look for ways that we might be wrong. And these two systems, these societal systems of thinking fast and thinking slow, have really become somewhat distorted over the last few years with the onset of the attention economy and the social media platforms.
And usually we're making our decisions based on the fast thinking way. How the slow thinking way can support us in making those decisions, because those decisions very often are, for example, who we're gonna elect in the next elections.
So this is something that I've been working on for the past few years, Maya, is trying to figure out how to take that scientific style of thinking and speed it up so it works almost as quickly for all of society as social media and the daily news. And we've been doing that with a system that, marshals the work of a lot of people and the work of AI to look at content, to see, like we were saying in the beginning, look at the rhetoric, see how different ideas are composed into writing. And then we can see patterns in how people are being manipulated and show those patterns to people as they read. So now, as people use the fast thinking system of media and social media, we can have this scientific slow thinking system layered onto it in real time.
And does it support the education of people when they started to be aware?
Absolutely. So there's a big debate in the US at least, but I think also across Europe and the Western world, a big concern about free speech versus censorship. And what we can do when we start speeding up our slow thinking system is we can take every bit of misinformation, every bit of kind of confusing or manipulative rhetoric, and we can turn those things into learning opportunities. So instead of just censoring content, we can say like this content here is using an appeal to authority, or it's posing a false dilemma, or it's confusing correlation and causation. So that way we're training the public to understand these ways that we all fool each other, and using the misinformation as a learning opportunity.
And that's something that we can educate people at schools, at the universities, but also beyond?
Exactly. So right now with some of the tools that we're able to develop with AI, these tools with labeling the content can be given to news readers online. So people who read the news every day can see these things. But also, that AI system needs to be trained and improved. And it gets trained and improved by humans who are using very careful protocols to analyze through the content. And for the most part, the humans who are doing that analysis work are students at universities and in high schools who are using some of our tools so that we make sure that humans are always in the loop and understanding and learning these things in a formal way, but also training the AI that the public is using at scale.
Exactly, showing how AI can be aligned with humans and how it actually can support also us in learning, right? But how big platforms, because you've been talking about the attention economy,
Right.
how we can influence big platforms not to use this way of manipulating people, because that's a bit what we have in social media.
This is a huge challenge, as you know, Maya, because ever since, in the US context, the Communications and Decency Act, Section 230, this gave platforms immunity from the responsibilities of traditional publishers like newspapers. So it gave them immunity from having to worry about the quality of the content that goes out on the platform. But what's happened over time is that the lower the quality of the content, the more misinforming, the more outrageous, the more emotionally charged, the worse the rhetoric, the more attention it gets. So the platforms have actually been making more money as the information environment has degraded, has gotten worse. So with tools like what I'm describing with the AI tools, we can start to kind of return things to a better situation. But there's also some policy opportunities on the horizon, particularly in the EU with the Digital Services Act. So this is a big challenge, reversing some of the trends and incentives of the attention economy. And the solution is really going to require a technical solution and a policy solution at the same time.
Exactly, and this policy solution we are right now implementing in Poland and the European Union, it's all about values, and that's what I'm hearing, but how we can also support the economy in order to change this way of earning money.
This is the big, giant question. I was recently at a conference where we were trying to discuss, is there a business model for truth? Because the incentives of the attention economy really are paying people more and more money to make more outrageous and more misinforming content. So we think the first step in this is just to be able to actually measure the quality of content. And this goes back to the first question you asked me, which is about rhetoric and finding these different patterns of manipulation, these different patterns of misinformation, whether they're reasoning errors or cognitive biases or emotional manipulations. When we can scientifically measure those and see how much they are occurring on different platforms, we start to create a signal that people can perform for, that journalists can perform for. So instead of just performing for what gets people the most upset and holds their attention, they can also start to perform for what is the high quality information that people really want to consume. And this changes the dynamics and the economics on the supply side and on the demand side of the information economy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for showing how education is important and how knowledge and awareness is crucial in a way of how we deal with today's world. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here, Maia. Thank you.
Let's now have a look at how media literacy is used to effectively tackle disinformation.
Why is critical thinking so important in the digital age? Critical thinking is crucial to combating misinformation and navigating the overwhelming flow of online information. It helps individuals recognize personal biases that influence their acceptance of news, identify emotional manipulation in sensationalized stories, and question the credibility of sources. By fostering skepticism and teaching verification techniques like fact-checking and cross-referencing reliable outlets, critical thinking empowers people to discern true from dis- and misinformation and encourages them to break out of algorithm-driven echo chambers by seeking diverse perspectives.
Learning is a crucial part of building our resilience to change. Education is one of the most powerful tools we have to counter disinformation. By fostering critical thinking and media literacy and ensuring equal access to learning opportunities, we can empower entire generations to navigate the information landscapes of today and tomorrow. So until next time, keep calm and think deeply.